to increase the effectiveness of the smoke, we can begin to break it up using the volumetric color on the ambient and diffuse intensity, respectively. Right now the smoke is a little too smooth inside of the billowing. To control this, I'm going to go in and grab the new texture fractal scalar node, and if I first of all just view the fractal shader, I'm just going to plug it in first to the ambience intensity, and I'll just turn off the render region. What I want to do is to try and get a kind of a noisy pattern to help break up the cloud texture a little bit more. And you'll notice that by adding in this fractal pattern, we can already add a little bit of noise into the cloud just to kind of break it up a little bit. Now I want the noise to be very specific here, so I'm going to double click on the fractal scalar and hit view so I get the little preview region. And I want to have a fairly large scaled fractal texture, but I want it to have some detail to it. So I'm just going to kind of come in and add some more contrast. To the scalar. I'm going to bias it in favor of the whites just slightly, and then I'm going to add some noise and some recursion to it. So I'm going to up the recursion level to add some detail, so add some texture to the smoke. And as far as the scale goes, I'm actually going to scale it up, and I'm going to make it quite noisy. I don't want to have it too smooth. Alright, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to use this now as a control for my ambience intensity. So wherever it's dark, we get very little intensity. Wherever it's light, we'll get more intensity. So this should go a long way into helping our cause. Our cloud should look quite a bit more detailed after this. Keep in mind that I still haven't tuned my cell table to its final rendered output, and my aliasing is still mid-range at best. So now we're starting to get some definition to the cloud, so we're getting some shape and some definition. I could even take another fractal scalar shader, or even try the cell scalar shader, and use it to drive the diffuse intensity. Now again, I don't want the particles to be too large in terms of their scale or too small in terms of their scale. So right away on these scalar shaders, I'm going to take their axis scale down so that I'm dealing with some fairly large areas of light and dark contrast. And then what I'm going to do is reverse the colors. And as far as the pattern goes, I'm actually going to go in and adjust the contrast a little bit. I want more black. And I'll bias it towards the black. And as far as the shape goes, I don't really want flagstones. This actually should work pretty well for me. I'm just going to turn on more of a random pattern. More white spots. I've actually reversed them, so that's what I mean there. Let's see what something like that does. I'll take the scale down a little bit more. So now I should have a fairly high diffuse intensity as well. So again, just more breakup to the cloud pattern. The last thing I'm going to do before settling on this as my final result is to increase or decrease the values in the lookup table. So under the volume rendering, I'm going to set the cell size to 1. So you notice that the render time is substantially longer now, but in order to get the definition we want, we may have to go that route. I can also, actually, let me take the cell size back up. I'm going to leave it at about 2. Let's see what actually happens if I raise it higher. So I'm losing a lot of detail here. You can actually see the noise returning. So I'll return this to a value of 2. I'm going to try and push up the contrast in the particles themselves by increasing the gradient position. So I'm going to stretch out that gradient a little more. So it starts at a value of 4. And hopefully here I can bring some more contrast into this cloud. I'm also going to do a last little bit of a tint on some of these light areas. I'll perhaps just add a little bit of purple, purpley green. So it should just pick up a hint of that. I'll take down the end color a little bit more, just to clamp those light areas down a bit. So I'll just get a final render out of this, and then we'll turn our shadow casting ability on our main infinite light, and we'll let this scene render with the proper render settings and view our final result. So it's been a combination of working with ice and the render tree to get the look of our smoke appropriate. One of the other neat kind of things that we can do as well is in the particle shaper node, sorry, not the particle shaper, in the particle renderer node, we already have our particles spinning in ice, but depending on the shape that we use, we can also get the particles to rotate as well, to add a bit of roll to them, or even to align them based on velocity or on particle direction. We can also use the fall-off bias to thin out the particles somewhat. So if we need less particles, sort of less density to the particles, we can go and reduce the fall-off bias. But in my case here, we're going to go with what we have. I'm going to just adjust the cell table for a final render. I'll take the cell size down to a value of 1, let's say 1.5. I'll set it to linear. Cubic might be a little too slow. And on the infinite light, if I select it, okay, that's the one over there. It's actually this one I want. So this is actually going to be my shadow casting light here, dark shadows. I'll set up the render to last over, let's see, we're going to start the render from the first frame where the smoke starts to come out. So I'll actually have the render go over about 300 or 400 frames. So we'll have a good representation of how this effect looks. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful. We'll finish this off by having a look at a final flipbook. So I'll set up my render options. So let's go from frames 1 to 400. In a custom format, 720 by 540. We'll set up the name of our render pass. We'll call this the thick smoke. Render it off as a pick sequence is just fine by me. I'll save the scene, and this would be our final for the thick smoke. Alright, we'll come back when the scene is rendered off.